Chapter 10, The Lobster Quadrille.
The Mock Turtle sighed deeply and drew back one of his flippers across his eyes. He looked at Alice and tried to speak, but for a minute or two, sobs choked his voice. "Same as if he had a bone in his throat," said the Gryphon, and set to work shaking him and punching him in the back. At last the Mock Turtle recovered his voice, and with tears running down his cheeks, went on again. "You may not have lived much under the sea." "I haven't," said Alice. "And perhaps you were never even introduced to a lobster." Alice began to say, "I once tasted a lobster," but checked herself and hastily said, "No, never." "So you can have no idea what delightful thing a lobster quadrille is." "No, indeed," said Alice. "What sort of dance is it?" "Why," the Gryphon said, the first form into a line along the seashore." "Two lines," cried the Mock Turtle. "Snails, turtles, salmon, and so on. Then, when you've cleared all the jellyfish out of the way—" "That generally takes some time," interrupted the Gryphon. "You advance twice, each with a lobster as a partner," cried the Gryphon. "Of course," the Mock Turtle said. "Advance twice, set to partners. Change lobsters and return to the same order," continued the Gryphon. "Then you know," the Mock Turtle went on, "you throw the—" "Lobster!" shouted the Gryphon, and bound into the air. "As far out to the sea as you can." "Swim after them!" screamed the Gryphon. "Turn a somersault in the sea!" cried the Mock Turtle, creeping wildly about. "Change the lobster again!" yelled the Gryphon on top of his voice. "Back to land again! And that's all the first figure," said the Mock Turtle, suddenly dropping his voice, and the two creatures, who had been jumping around like mad things all the time, sat down very sadly and quietly and looked at Alice. "It must have been a very pretty dance," Alice said timidly. "Would you like to see a little of it?" said the Mock Turtle. "Very much indeed," said Alice. "Come, let's try first figure," said the Mock Turtle to the Gryphon. "Can we do that without lobsters? Which shall sing?" "Oh, you sing," said the Gryphon. "I've forgotten the words." So they began solemnly dancing round and round, Alice now and then treading on her own toes when they passed too close, and wavering their forepaws to mark the time when the Mock Turtle sang this very slowly and sadly. "Will you walk a little faster?" said a whiting to a snail. "There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail. See how lobsters and turtles all advance. They are waiting on the shingle. Will you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you join the dance? Will you, won't you join the dance? You can really have no notion how delightful it will be when they take us up and throw us with the lobsters out to sea." But the snail replied, too far, and gave a look askin. Said he thanked the whiting kindly, but he would not join the dance. Would not join the dance. Would not join the dance. "What matters is how far we go," he scarcely friend replied. "There's another shore, you know, upon the other side, further off from England, and nearer is to France. Then turn not pale, beloved snail, but come and join the dance. Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Thank you. It's a very interesting dance to watch, said Alice, feeling glad it was over at last. And I do so like the curious song about the whiting. Oh, as to the whiting, said the Mock Turtle, you've seen them, of course. Yes, said Alice, often seen them at She checked herself hastily. I don't know where Din may be, said the Mock Turtle, but if you've seen them so often, of course you know what they're like. I believe so, Alice replied thoughtfully. They have their tails in their mouths, and they're all over crumbs. You're wrong about the crumbs, said the Mock Turtle. Crumbs would be all awash off in the sea. But they have their tails in their mouths. That's the reason. Here, the Mock Turtle yawned and shut his eyes. Tell her about the reason all that is, he said to the Griffin. The reason is, said the Griffin, that they would go with the lobsters to the dance. So they get thrown out to sea. So you'd have a long fall away. So they got their tails fast in their mouths, so they couldn't get them out again. That's all. Thank you, said Alice. It's very interesting. I never knew so much about the whiting before. I can tell you more like that, if you like, said the Griffin. Do you know why it's called a whiting? I never thought about it, said Alice. Why? It does the boots and the shoes, the Griffin replied very solemnly. Alice thoughtfully puzzled. Does the boots and the shoes? She repeated in a wondering tone. Why, what are your shoes done with? Said the Griffin. I mean, what makes them so shiny? Alice looked down at them and considered a little before she gave her answer. They're done with blackening, I believe. The boots and the shoes under the sea, the Griffin went on, in a deep voice, are done with whiting. Now you know. And what they are made of, Alice asked in a tone of great curiosity. The soles and eels, of course, the Griffin replied rather impatiently. Any shrimp could have told you that. If I'd been a whiting, said Alice, those thoughts were still running through the song, I'd have some porpoise keep me back, please. I don't want you with us. They were obliged to leave him with them, the Mock Turtle said. No fish would go anywhere without a porpoise. Wouldn't it really? Said Alice, in a tone of great surprise. Of course not, the Mock Turtle said. Why, if a fish came to me and told me he was going on a journey, I should say, with what purpose? Don't you mean purpose? Said Alice. I mean what I say, the Mock Turtle replied in an offended tone. The Griffin added, Come, let's hear some of your adventures. I could tell you my adventures, beginning from this morning, said Alice a little timidly, but there's no use in going back to yesterday, because I was a different person then. Explain all that, the Mock Turtle said. No, the adventures first, the Griffin in an impatient tone. Explanations take such a dreadful time. So Alice began telling them her adventures from the time when she first saw the white rabbit. She was a little nervous about it, just at first, The two creatures got so close to her, one on each side, and opened their eyes and mouths so very wide, but she gained courage as she went on. Her listeners were perfectly quiet till she got to the part about repeating "your old father William" to the centerpillar, and the words coming different. And then the Mock Turtle drew a long breath and said, "That's very curious." "It's all about as curious as it can be," said the Gryphon. It all came different," the Mock Turtle repeated thoughtfully. "I should like to hear her try and repeat something now. Tell her to begin." He looked at the Gryphon as if he thought it had some kind of authority over Alice. "Stand up and repeat. 'Tis the voice of the struggled," said the Gryphon. How the creatures ordered one about and make one repeat one's lessons, Alice thought. I might just as well be at school at once. However, she got up and began to repeat it, but her head was so full of the Lobster Quadrille that she hardly knew what she was saying when the words came out very queer indeed. "'Tis the voice of the lobster," I heard him declare. "Have you baked me too brown? I must sugar my hair." As the duck with his eyelids, so he with his nose trims his belt and his buttons, and turns out his toes. And when the sands are all dry, and he is gray as a lark, and you will talk contemptuously in the tones of the shark. But when the tide rises and the sharks are all around, his voice has a timid and tumultuous sound. "That's different from what I used to say when I was a child," said the Gryphon. "Well, I never heard it before," said the Mock Turtle. "But it sounds uncommon nonsense." Alice said nothing. She had sat down with her face in her hands, wondering if anything would ever happen in a natural way again. "I should like to have it explained," said the Mock Turtle. "She can't explain it," said the Gryphon hesitantly. "Go on with the new verse." "But about his toes," the Mock Turtle persisted. "How could he turn out his nose, you know?" "It's the first position in the dance," Alice said, but she was dreadfully puzzled by the whole thing and longed to change the subject. "Go on with the next verse," repeated the Gryphon. "It begins, 'I passed by his garden.'" Alice did not dare disobey, though she felt sure it would come all wrong, and she went on, trembling her voice. "I passed by his garden and marked with one eye how the owl and the panther were sharing a pie. The panther took pie crust and gravy and meat, while the owl the dish and its share of the treat. When the pie was all finished, the owl, as a boon, was kindly permitted to pocket the spoon, while the panther received the knife and fork with a growl, and concluded the banquet by—" "What is the use of repeating all this stuff?" the Mock Turtle interrupted, "if you don't explain it as you go on? It's by far the most confusing thing I've ever heard." "Yes, I think you better leave off," said the Gryphon, and Alice was only too glad to do so. "Shall we try another figure of the Lobster Quadrille?" the Gryphon went on, "or would you like the Mock Turtle to sing you another song?" "Oh, a song, please, if the Mock Turtle would be so kind," Alice replied, so eagerly that the Gryphon, in a rather offended tone, "No accounting for taste. Sing her 'Turtle Soup,' will you, old fellow?" The Mock Turtle sighed deeply and began in a voice choked with sobs to sing this: "Beautiful soup, Soup so rich and green, waiting in a hot tureen. Who for such dainties would not stoop? Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup, beautiful soup, beautiful soup. Who cares for fish, game, or any other dish? Who would not give all else for 2p worth? Only beautiful soup. Pennyworth, only beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup! Chorus again, cried the Gryphon, and the Mock Turtle had just begun to repeat it when the cry of the trial's beginning was heard in the distance. Come on, cried the Gryphon, taking Alice by the hand, and hurried off without waiting for an end of the song. What trial is it? Alice panted as she ran, but the Gryphon only answered, Come on! And ran faster, while more and more faintly cried in the breeze following them the melancholy words, Soup of the evening, beautiful soup, beautiful soup.